For me, just describe physically what area you're going to actually be covering, running for, all that good stuff.
So the 9th Division Circuit Court has the whole county of Pulaski and all of Perry. So our electorate, the people who can vote for us, is anyone in Pulaski and Perry County. And so I'll share with you, and when I've been campaigning, there are some people who don't know what county they live in. And so I typically have this little rundown of like Little Rock, North Little Rock, Sherwood, Jacksonville, Maumelle, all of the and surrounding areas.
Right.
And then Perry County, which includes like Bigelow, Houston, Perryville. So all of that area is our district.
Okay. And I know you guys can't really run necessarily on issues per se, because it's different in the judge world here. But what exactly is it that you want to bring to the table for the circuit court judge? So
I do have a platform, and I call it a 3D platform. The D's actually stand for something, but it's also a play on words. And so I've been practicing for 18 years, and this platform developed based on my experiences and my dealings in court and my professional experience. So 3D, the first D is using judicial discretion, right? So we know that's a fancy word for wiggle room. But there's a lot of discretion that's built into our law, whether it's case law, statutory law, or any of that. There is a good amount of discretion that judges can use in order to reach the second D, which is an equitable disposition of cases, right? So you want a judge that will bring his or her experiences, their common sense, and use that to apply the law to a specific fact pattern. And that's what gets to an equitable disposition. I'll give you an example. Equality is not equity. And I try to make sure people understand that. If we're in a room with 100 people and I decide to gift a size 7 red stiletto pump to everybody in the room, there are some people that aren't going to be able to do anything with that, right? Do you wear heels?
No.
So I've treated everyone the same, but not everybody benefits from that. Not everybody's quality of life is improved because of what I've done. And so that's where that second D comes from. The third D is, after the first two D's happen, then it helps to decrease the negative perception of the bench. When people think of court, they freak out. They don't like judges. They don't like appearing before judges. And most people think that when you appear before a judge, you're in trouble. And that's not always the case. And so there are even attorneys who don't like practicing in front of certain judges, and I practice across the state, so I'm not talking just about Pulaski County, I'm talking generally, and so I want to change that perception. And so those 3 Ds, and so the play on words is this: there are people who come to court, and they're real people. When we think of 3D, if you go to a movie, you're thinking, alive, you're thinking dimensional, multidimensional, and so are people when they come to court. There are different levels to people. And I want to be able to, when real people come before the bench with real issues, I want to be able to see them as a real person and offer real results and real fair resolutions of their cases.
And I guess just kind of give us a quick background on why you would be qualified for this position.
So I'm born and raised, I'm the only candidate in my race that is born and raised in Pulaski County. Even though the 6th Judicial District is a 2-county district, consists of Pulaski and Perry, Pulaski obviously makes up the bulk of the cases that come before circuit judges. I think it's important for a judge who is wanting to make an equitable disposition of the case, make sure that they understand the culture, the norms of what our neighborhoods, what our communities have to face. Because I think if you are not a part of that, you run the risk of not being able to use your experiences that are outside of this jurisdiction to bring that equitable disposition. So that's really important to me. So that's one area where my experience stands out. I've sat as a special judge off and on since 2008 when I opened my private practice. So I've been practicing 18 years and sitting as a special judge off and on for the last 11. And that's like a substitute teacher. So when the elected judge is out, he or she may call and say, hey, are you available? And then I'm elected by my peers to have the opportunity to do that. And I've done that in at least 5 divisions across Pulaski County, district court and the circuit court level. So I will have, heard cases and make decisions in cases that are going to be the cases that I would hear if elected.
Now, do you get to kind of pick and choose your cases in sort of this at-large role, or is it just kind of you catch everything else that maybe some of the others don't necessarily focus on?
So it is based on seniority. So every 2 years, the Judicial Council, the judges get together and they create an administrative plan. That administrative plan is then approved by the Supreme Court. Most of the time, the senior judges kind of cherry pick their caseload. And then, once this plan, is drawn and submitted and approved, then that's the caseload that happens. So 9th Division, based on the current administrative plan that would take effect January of 2021, which is when the elected judges would take office, Division 9 would hear probate cases, which is like your guardianships, adoptions, will and trust, civil litigation, that's a really big one, breach of contract, personal injury, medical malpractice, constitutional challenges, administrative appeals, property disputes, all that stuff. Domestic relations, which is a huge one. All of your family law, divorce, custody, child support, paternity, all that stuff. And then, did I say mental health? Yeah. No? Yeah, mental health is the 4th one. So those, and that's not to say that the 9th Division would hear all of those cases. It would be a percentage of each, because there would be other judges that would hear those cases as well.
That seems like a pretty wide spectrum of different, litigation. I guess too, for people, how are you qualified to kind of hear? I mean, you go from, like I said, from one end of the spectrum to the other, it feels like.
Yes. So I'm a trial attorney first of all, so I understand what comes up when you are a trial attorney, as far as discovery, which is the formal process by which attorneys exchange information. I'm fully familiar with the trial of cases, jury trials, bench trials, hearings. I've done all of that. I started my career as a deputy prosecuting attorney, and everyone knows that they just throw you right in. And I was able to serve the residents of Pulaski and Perry County as a deputy prosecutor for almost 6 years. I jumped across the table, as I call it, and was a deputy public defender. And then I went out and opened my own practice in 2008. 2013, I took a little break from private practice and became a deputy city attorney. And so all of those experiences helped me to understand the vast areas of law and issues that are presented, but it also allowed me to understand the process. And by that I mean when you deal with pro se litigants who come before court and they don't have an attorney because they can't afford one. So I've dealt with criminal issues in my trial practice. I've dealt with domestic relation issues in my trial practice. I've dealt with constitutional issues, illegal exaction. Who knows what that is? I didn't until I started learning about it, preparing for cases. Municipal law on a city level. All of these issues come before, or at least have the potential to come before, a circuit court judge. The bulk of my private practice is domestic relations. And I chose that because just about every other area of law is affected by issues raised by domestic relations cases. So we're talking domestic abuse, we're talking the best interests of children when you're talking about custody cases, visitation, child support. I mean, everything, mental health issues, everything is somewhat rooted in domestic relations area. So
I guess too, I know being a judge it's a law thing and you interpret the law, but are there any changes that you aspire to make if you were to be elected to this position?
So any changes that I would propose to make would be administrative, if anything, because it's important for people to understand that the judiciary is that arm of government that only interprets and applies the law that is in place. Our job as judges would not be to create new law. That's not our function. That is the function of the legislators, which is why it's so important that people participate in the process. And because of that, we are kind of stuck with what we have. Now, there may be some issues that raise other issues, and that's where case law comes in because of the way something is interpreted. But as far as changing the law itself, I wouldn't have any proposals because that's not what my function is. I would have, going back to my 3D platform, it's a matter of controlling your domain as a judge, which is the courtroom, making sure that the docket flows swiftly, clean, making sure that people don't have cases hanging over their heads for lengthy periods of time, using modern technology to facilitate different cases and caseloads so that we can keep up with the times and also help attorneys who may be very overworked and busy to be able to facilitate the movement of their cases either by conference calls, by making some minor changes in the way cases are set and things like that. So it would be administrative, not substantive.
And I guess as a voter, when I hear kind of all these administrative things, it's almost like, why should I care? And I guess sell me on that. Like, as a voter, why do I care about some of the just administrative things?
If you have been in a car accident and you are waiting to have a final judgment, a final disposition for it to be over, you've missed work, you've had some injury to you that still bothers you, and you want to get this behind you because how it's changed your life, you may not want your case on the docket for 3 years. And that happens. I broke my wrist in a very, very bad car accident, and I was immobile for 18 months, 4 surgeries on my wrist, just my wrist. But it changed my life. And understanding how things progress through the court system, I want to make it easy for everyday voters to understand we're going to get your case in, get it heard, and get you moving on. A divorce. You don't really want a divorce just lingering. I mean, it's bad enough you've had to cut ties with someone that you've been connected to legally, but you really don't want to be in court for 18 months to 2 years to get a final divorce decree. Those are some of the reasons why an average person who's just, they wake up, they go on about their day, but then all of a sudden they're having to shift to deal with the legal issue. It's important to them. The issue is a lot of times people don't realize why they should care until they're forced to realize why they should care.
And I guess final thing here, a lot of times the judge, you guys are the administrators of law. I guess too, and kind of piggybacking off what you said there, I mean, how important do you think it is from a judge standpoint to be, about the community that you guys sort of serve, and to also kind of educate people, not only just on the processes, but just, law stuff in general?
One of the main reasons is because people have to understand and feel like they receive equal access to justice. Pro se litigants sometimes come into court and they don't have the funds to hire an attorney, and they're treated like an attorney. They're treated as though they should know the courtroom norms that have been set by the judge. They're treated as if they should know procedural issues. What do I need to do to make sure this happens? They're treated as if they're supposed to know, well, this is the information that you include in a divorce complaint. But they don't. They don't understand that. And so it's important for me as a public servant to provide whatever services I can to help them get through this process as smoothly and as effortlessly and as quickly as possible. There are certain lines and guidelines, of course. There are judicial canons and rules that govern what I could do. But using the equal access to justice example, there's nothing that prohibits me from my law clerk providing some guidelines that doesn't cross the line of practicing law or giving legal advice, because I, as a judicial officer, wouldn't be able to do that. But maybe there is a one-pager that just says, if this is your issue, this is what you need to do. If it's a domestic abuse and you're asking for an order of protection or something like that, or a divorce where there are no children, no property, it seems to be uncontested, just some pointers. And there are judges who currently do that on the state and federal level. And so utilizing those things to make my mark and to make sure that people are comfortable expressing themselves, that they are heard, that they feel that they are heard, and that the case that they bring before the court is valued by the judge and is just not dismissed because they're not represented by an attorney.
And you were kind of pointing this out earlier, but I feel like too that there seems to be kind of a judge movement to actually have more compassion in the courtroom, and it's not just letters of the law, and this is how it is, and this is what you got to do. Have you noticed that, and kind of what do you want to bring in sort of that compassion role on the bench?
Yes, I've noticed that, and it's one of the things that fed into my platform. You have to be compassionate. And I'll share with you this. I have a lot of life experiences, a lot, and it was not all crystal stairs. I had issues to overcome, and I like to share those things in smaller settings to let people understand that I'm just an ordinary person trying to really do some extraordinary things to change the quality of life for people. When you talk about divorce and debt that comes from divorce, and you talk about just parenting and issues that come up with parenting, and you think about having to deal with everyday issues, just basic life issues. It's important that you carry that over to the people that are in front of you, whether it's extending courtesies to attorneys that practice before your bench, compassion, empathetic, understanding when people appear before the court and they may not have everything they need, or they appear before court and they're really not sure what's going on. It's okay to allow them to just stop for a minute, ask for help, give whatever help you can. It's important that we're compassionate because some of that has been lost and some of that understanding has been lost. And my goal is to help to make individuals better, because individuals make families better and families make communities better. And that's something that's really important and something that I think if we get back to will help make all of us better.